different cities, people are resisting for the expansion of mosque or having the new permit. 3 examples are right from New York. So unfortunately this is the case, but the Muslims also feel they have the obligation to speak out and wake up and to reach out to the non-Muslims so that we can try to rectify these misunderstandings.
So the last 6 months coincides with the Park 51?
Mostly, yeah. But before Park 51, there was some incidents in Milwaukee and in Tennessee. Yeah.
You mentioned Sydney, the incident in upstate New York.
Yeah, you can explain. This is also recent.
And this is an example of cooler heads prevailing. In upstate New York, in Sydney, New York, some of the town officials, almost directly coinciding with Park 51, decided that they were going to close a Muslim cemetery in Sydney, New York. And they actually proposed no longer allowing people to be buried in this cemetery, and actually went so far as to say that they were going to exhume the remains of 2 Muslims who had already been buried there. And so the Muslims who live up in that area, they went and got a lawyer, went to the Council on American Islamic Relations, and there was some dialogue, and so the town officials withdrew their request. And so now an interfaith group of religious leaders in Sydney, New York, are actually kind of moving in on the situation to help to use that as an opportunity for healing and reconciliation. And this is the purpose of our event and the part of our mission as Muslim religious leaders, and that is to help effect healing and reconciliation in American society after all of the tension and the conflict of the past several months.
Could you, while you're there, give me another example of the similarities between Christianity and Judaism?
I'm sorry.
Could you give another example?
I want to give you one interesting example. During the time of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, when he became the head of state in the city of Medina, there were some Jews living there. And they bought a Jewish man and woman who had committed adultery. And they wanted his judgment. And it's interesting that he didn't say, well, let me tell you what the Quran says, and let me tell you what my traditions say. He said, Man tajiduna fi kitabikum. What do you find in your book? Because what the Prophet was saying is that when you look in your book, the Torah is the verse of stoning. So Muslims, people talk about, well, the Muslims, this is kind of savage religion. You talk about stoning. But what the Prophet was saying is look in your own book. That's just a small example. When you go back to the original laws of this country, many of them were based on some religious tradition. Number one. Number two, the Quran says that that Muhammad and the believers believe in the prophets. Interesting to note, if you go to any Muslim community and you ask the name of these Muslims, what would be their names? Many of them would have the name Muhammad, but many of them would have the name Moses and Jesus and Abraham and Mary. I would argue that the most common name in the Muslim community of women is Mary, named after Mary. There's a chapter in the Quran called Miriam, named after Mary, the mother of Jesus. Number two, if you ask the Muslims about their belief in Jesus, they will believe that Jesus is one of the great prophets ever. And they will say that Jesus, Muslims I'm saying, will say that Jesus raised the dead, that Jesus cured those born blind, that Jesus cured those who had leprosy. And they will also say, every Muslim will tell you that the day of judgment will not come until Jesus returns. So the Muslims believe in the return of Jesus. The Muslims believe in the Torah. The Muslims believe in the Injil. In the Quran, Allah says, وَأَنزَلَ التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ, and God revealed the Torah and the Gospel. So we believe that the Torah is from God. We believe that Moses is a prophet of God. We believe that the gospel is from God. We believe that Jesus is a prophet of God. So when you start asking the Muslims about the similarity, I give you millions of similarities, a million of them. One more, I give you more.
No,
Sunday. Okay, I appreciate very much. We use the term masjid. Masjid equal for mosque. Masjid is Arabic terminology, M-A-S-J-I-D. So you can use it as a mosque. Okay. So thank you very much for your coming, and I really appreciate. And if you want to be in touch with us, or if you want to visit any of the open house, I have provided you the schedule, so you are most welcome to visit any of those mosques. But I appreciate if you just give them a phone call beforehand, or if you are not able to reach them, give me a call. I will make the special arrangement for you. So.
Speak Spanish?
Yo hablo un poquito de español.
No, for Spanish.
No, just...
El español es la lengua secundaria.
We have 26 or 27 different nationalities in this masjid.
And one time, man. You want? What is it?
Imam, that's modest. What do you mean by on the fly?
Oh, well, don't come in with no hot pants.
Make sure you got your hot pants and headphones.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You don't have to.
So we believe it's a requirement. The majority of the poets, North, don't come down. You don't force them. You don't force them to come. His name is you don't force them.
Imam Siraj.
Uncover them. What do you do? You don't kick them out of the match. Where you come in. That's what you want to aim.
Winning lawsuits in New York or across the country, asserting their rights. With big lawsuit right here was in all the papers 3 weeks ago.
Well, say to people who believe that terrorist plots are coming up in mosques. They think they're evil places.
You know what? About 10 years ago, Daniel Pipes wrote an article, and he said that the evil isn't Islam. That was Daniel Pipes, and he's one of the big opponents of Islam. But the evil isn't Islam. And it's interesting, recently, Paul Sperry, he wrote a book called Infiltration, and he said the problem isn't the misinterpretation of the Quran, the problem is the Quran. So people say that the issue is that there are some Muslims that are terrorists. I agree with that. There are Muslims that are terrorists. These are very, very, very bad people. But it's not based upon the Quran or based upon the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad.
Wait, I'm sorry. Right.
Yes.
Say that, and also, you know, what would you say to me if I came in here and said, look, I think you guys are all terrorists. You're condoning terrorists in your mosques. This is where the plots are cooked up.
It's interesting, about 10 years ago, Daniel Pipes wrote an article that stated that the problem isn't Islam, that Muslims are not terrorists, but the problem are the extremists among the Muslims. Recently, a man named Paul Sperry wrote a book called Infiltration. And in that book he said that the problem isn't the misinterpretation of the Quran, but the problem is the Quran itself. So now this new wave of people actually are condemning the Quran, which is something new. They're condemning the Prophet and the Quran, which is something new. Our argument is that the issue isn't the Quran. The Quran is right, the Torah is right, the Gospel of Jesus is right. All of these are divine books revealed to prophets. But the people take advantage and misinterpret these books, not just Muslim terrorists, Jewish terrorists, Christian terrorists, and they use their book, they misrepresent the book.
That's the issue. And so if you or anyone would say, well, the Muslims teach terrorism, well, you have to give us an example. You can't just say something out of your mind without giving the proof. And I can give you the proof because people would like, and what they usually do, they take things out of context. They take verses out of context. They take historical happenings out of context. And we like to put them back in context.
I'm just curious as to what you thought, because I thought this probably would have made you like shrink in your I don't know. But when the alleged, or when the Times Square bomber was sentenced, he said that this is just the start of an Islamic movement to kill Americans. What did you think when he said that?
You know what? He's a nut. And I'm serious. People who make statements like that, where is he coming from? And you know what the problem is? When you have articulate men like him, Imam Talib, Imam Al-Amin, the president of the Majlis As-Shura, we don't hear their statements. But anytime some fanatic makes some crazy statement, and then you blow it up, and then you repeat it over and over again as if that's a fact. That's the problem. That is the problem. And I think that media has a responsibility. At least be balanced. You know, why don't we hear the same amount of times of the responsible Muslim leaders saying responsible things? How come we don't hear them over and over again? But some misguided person makes some outrageous statement and everybody want to cover it. I think that's outlandish.
Imam, would you say that if the people were to follow the Quran, that we wouldn't have these kind of problems?
Absolutely. If we in fact followed the Quran, obeyed the Quran, we wouldn't have these problems. And that's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You was 12 for the Bronx?
Brooklyn. Yeah. And I'm actually doing more.
Yeah, 12 is a good station, man.
In Sheepshead Bay. You by chance know the guy who's trying to build the place? Have you talked to him at all?
In Sheepshead Bay?
Yeah.
No.
No?
I met the one in Manhattan.
Okay. Well, how about this? Your reaction to hearing the fever that some people in the neighborhood have against this place being in Sheepshead Bay?
Well, very interesting because I've heard kind of two different opinions. One opinion says that the only problem they have is the problem that will be created in parking and traffic. That they're not against Islam, they're not against Muslims. And then there's another group there who are saying they're repeating all of these stereotypical comments. This is, the latest phase of Islamization, and we don't want terrorists in our neighborhood and what have you. And I think that their opinions are just being manipulated and engineered by a few extremists who are intentionally trying to misrepresent the religion of Islam.
What would you say to some of the people who are against having a Islamic center in their neighborhood for those fanatic reasons?
We would say to them that this is a free country and it's an open country, and that 99.9% of the Muslims just want to be good neighbors and live their lives as Americans, and that they should move over and make room for other people.
And one more question, the reaction to it being approved first and then not being approved.
Again, our reaction was we could not help but wonder. This is just another example of the opinions of a small group of people influencing those in government. The New York City government made that mistake before with the Khalil Gibran School. And then when the Federal Equal Opportunities Commission ruled that Debbie Al-Muntasir had been the victim of bias, and that it was a successful attempt on the part of a few people who imposed their view on people in government. And the Khalil Gibran School is in Brooklyn also. So we would hope that people in city government don't make that mistake again.
If I'm not mistaken, the article says that it's been suspended.
It's been suspended, yeah.
And it's still bringing it back to be under review, but they haven't really. They
haven't stopped it, but what happened was they approved it first.
Right.
Say go ahead and start building. Wait, no.
Right.
Let's go back and look at it.
Thank you. I love 12, brother.